And finally, we'll also wrap up with yet another exclusive interview, and this is a big one. In his first television interview after assuming charge as the new U.S. ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti decoded the importance of the India-U.S. relationship right now. Remember, it's coming just a few weeks before the Prime Minister visits the United States for what is the first ever state visit in the 9 years that he's been Prime Minister. Ambassador Garcetti sat down with me and gave a wide-ranging interview where he talked about the importance of the Indo-Pacific in the current global order, the challenges that have been thrown up by the Russia-Ukraine war, and Chinese expansionism, including here in the Indian neighborhood. This is Eric Garcetti, U.S. Ambassador to India. All right, it's a very, very interesting time in the India-U.S. bilateral relationship. The Prime Minister is going to be going to the United States for his first ever state visit. That's going to be a phenomenal thing in and of itself. There are going to be events around it. But to talk about the state of the current relationship, what are the growth opportunities and the challenges therein, I have with me the one and only Eric Garcetti, the U.S. Ambassador to India. Yes. Thank you very much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18.
It's a great pleasure to be with you. Thank you for coming by.
All right. So you've been out and about here in India for a couple of months now almost.
Yes.
How's it been? How's your experience been so far?
It's been phenomenal. It feels like this is home. It feels like a place that has changed so much from the time I first came here when I was a teenager. But what hasn't changed is the spirit, the warmth of the people, the tie to history and culture. But you can feel something palpable that's different. India's kind of place in the world, India's investment in itself is really becoming a global example. And the friendship between our countries has never been stronger. You can feel that warmth between our leaders. You'll see it reflected at the state dinner. But it isn't just dependent on two people. It is about, 1.7 billion people who know, respect, like each other, and see the future of both sides tied together.
So how would you describe the current state of the India-U.S. Bilateral relationship? Of course, we've been hearing that, we're natural partners, strategic partners for the last almost 2 decades now. But what is the current state of the relationship according to you?
I think it's historic right now, and it's generational. Generational in both senses of the word. It's, something that's going to last more than this moment. It's an investment in a generation together, but it's also generating good things for our countries and for the world, whether it's technology and making sure that technology can be a force for good and not of oppression, whether it's strategic partnerships that say this is about maintaining and respecting borders and sovereignty, open seaways, or whether it's the people-to-people ties, which, of course, we've been building for a long time. Every Indian knows somebody who's studied in the U.S., traveled to the U.S. I think that this is a historic moment of our relationship. You're right, it's natural, but it's also generational. This is something that is not just about the short-term transaction, it's about the long-term relationship.
I want to talk to you a little bit about something you talked about a moment ago about the state dinner coming up in June, in the middle of June. It's the first time in 9 years that Prime Minister Modi will be attending a state visit. I think he's been there 4 times, if I'm not mistaken. What does this visit mean for the U.S. administration?
This is really about the idea of the Indo-Pacific now becoming something real, not just to guide our relationship with India, but to guide our own future in the United States, to make sure we're not dependent on any one place for our supply chains, to make sure that our values as two democracies stand in contrast to other countries who aren't democratic. This is about also the region and pulling together, not just through our bilateral ties, but our quadrilateral ties with Japan and Australia and the Quad, the I2U2 with Israel and UAE. We really have the ability, I think, to be a force together for doing good things, not just for our people, but a recognition in Washington that our future is tied to India's success, and India's success is tied to ours.
So you did talk about the Quad, about I2U2 and the Indo-Pacific. While there is great degree of convergence between India and the US on those realms, but there are divergences, particularly when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war. What are your concerns around the stand that India has taken, or it's not necessarily on the same page as the United States or Europe? How would you describe that?
Well, we won't stop speaking out about an unprovoked war of aggression by Russia against Ukraine. And I think when I talk to my Indian friends, sovereignty and borders matters a lot in this country, and they understand why the United States believes that rule of law, that central tenet of international relations, has to be respected and in some cases even fought for. Here, I was in Ukraine in February, and it's not just about power politics. This is about people. This is about the senior pensioner who has a missile ripping through her apartment building with no strategic value whatsoever. The parent who's separated from her children, living in another country with a family she's never met. We can't forget the human impact, and a country like India that has experienced war, I think, knows that and feels that. At the same time, where we don't agree 100% of the time, we're not going to stop the momentum in this relationship. We know that we can continue doing things together, even where, as all good friends do, we don't agree 100% of the time. But I think the street here in India recognizes how important that sovereignty issue is, how important borders and respecting them are, and will continue to say, you don't have to be involved in this war to feel its impact. This has affected the global economy, and India has suffered too because of what's going on.
Do you have specific concerns about the amount of oil India is importing from Russia? I believe the EU Foreign Affairs chief was here recently, and he expressed some concerns about that. Have you had any conversations of this nature with your Indian counterparts?
So our position is that India has helped us actually keep that price cap that was a central tenet. There wasn't a ban on this oil, but there was an attempt to price cap it. And so India's participation is actually fulfilling that goal for us. Were we to see that go higher or something else, we'd have to revisit that. But right now, it's in line with how the alliance has come together and what we have promoted. So we understand that oil is an international good, that prices affect all of us. But at the same time, whether it's diamonds, whether it's technology, other places where we want to be sure that there is a price for aggression, we're going to continue to very aggressively go after that and to hopefully bring like-minded people with us.
The most consequential relationship, of course, of the next many decades is going to be US-China. India has a stake in that relationship as well because India has its own share of divergences with China. How do you see the US role, particularly in this ongoing sort of border standoff that we have with China?
Well, I think our actions and spirit speak for itself. India has more military drills with the United States than any other country. Where there have been incidents and where India has called on us, we have been there. And I think that will continue to deepen, whether it's co-production of defense. It's about deterrence. It's about integrating our forces. It's about sharing at moments of crisis information with each other. And I think that's a very important front, not just for two countries, but for as many countries to stand by. If we don't respect those borders and if we don't respect boundaries for one country, they won't be respected for any country. So India can count on the friendship of America, they can count on the strategic relationship that we have, and I hope that the visit of the Prime Minister will embed some things that we will see that make this not about this year's agreement, but about the next 25, even 50 years.
All right, I want to get one last question in,
Sure.
And you had said this even during your Senate confirmation hearings, about one of the issues you want to take up with your Indian interlocutors is about religious freedom, freedom of the press, human rights, etc. Have you had those conversations with your Indian colleagues?
You know, we've been engaged and we will continue to engage on values that I believe India stands for and the United States stands for, but always from a place of humility. We have challenges with our press. We have challenges with our religious freedoms. We have challenges with hate crimes and racism. So this is really a dialogue for two friends to engage on and to learn those lessons about not whether bad things will happen, because they do in complex societies always, but how we react to them and how we prevent them from happening in the first place. So absolutely, I look forward to those conversations, but not as a tisk-tisk and looking down at people, or vice versa. I think this is about people who respect each other, engaging on those values, whether it's women's empowerment, whether it's religious freedom, whether it's a press that's vibrant, and making sure that we have honest conversations, vibrant conversations, and respectful conversations.
All right. Thank you for this conversation, Ambassador Garcetti.
Absolutely.
I wish you all the best in your stint here in India.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much.